Hi all, and welcome to this week's edition of Straight Talk with Bren O'Brien and Tim Rowe from The Straight, brought to you by our sponsors, Inglis and Darley. Today, we talk about the biggest issue in racing, proposal to sell Rosehill Racecourse. In Bready and Bloodstock, we discuss the pending sale of Bella Nipotina, the appointment of Andrew Hore-Lacy to the role of Thoroughbred Breeders Australia and Oswald CEO, plus the pressure on smaller to middle-range breeders and what that means. We also have the latest on the developments of the world of wagering, including relieving some of the fees on smaller bookies. Tim, let's get stuck into it. Rosehill has been the biggest issue in racing over the last 15 months. It continued to be at least until April 3 at this stage. There's obviously a lot going on the last week. The ATC released their notes to members last week about the voting and how it's going to work and their, proposal. How have you sort of seen how it's played out over the last week or so, Tim?
It's got a bit messy, hasn't it? Sort of both factions or sides of the argument. You know, the Peter McGauran pro-sale, and then the staunch opponents to the sale, Save Rosehill, a very vocal group, made their opinions all and sundry. Everyone has heard what they believe to be the right outcome, and that's keeping Rosehill, of course. It's just got very, very dirty, I guess, and murky, and you'd like to think everyone's sort of working for the best interests of racing, but when you've got opposing views at the moment of what the best way forward for that is, it's up until April 3, and probably post that vote, it's going to be a bit of bloodletting almost, quite nasty.
Yeah, it seems to be like there's a lot. It's a complex issue, and it always was a complex issue, and I think the ATC were aiming to get to a point where they could, where they could, put the case simply as possible to members, and they say they've tried to achieve that. Now, I spoke to Peter McGauran at length last Friday about this. We've got a clip for that coming up in a minute. But obviously the key aspect was that they wanted to put forward is, here's the people we wanted to buy it, the government, and here's how much money we're going to accept, $5 billion. And then we just need you to vote to say yes or no. And if you say yes, you have to agree for us to dispose of this core asset. So it's a really simple premise, I suppose, at its heart. But there's a lot of complexity about it. As you said, we've got pros and cons. We've got a very vocal opponents to the sale that I probably, someone asked me yesterday, how many people have you spoken to or seen that are, that believe or proponents of the sale? And I would probably think maybe 5 compared to probably 150 on the other side. Now, maybe that's the social media or the circles you mix in, but it certainly seems the ATC have a bit of an uphill barrel to push on this stuff at the moment. And then we've got sort of other aspects going on. The opponents are talking about some issues with the voting process and the way the proxies work. I don't want to necessarily get into that, but there's concerns around that. There's also concerns around the ATC employing call centres to go out and encourage people to vote, whether that's actually encouraging people to vote yes or just to vote full stop. And then we've got suggestions coming through that some significant voices in the racing industry have been effectively censored from speaking about this, which is quite remarkable when you consider. I mean, I don't think you're going to have much luck trying to censor Gay Waterhouse. She'll always find a way to get her voice out there, but it's messy is probably the polite way to describe it, isn't it, Tim?
Yes, that was an interesting. You're referring to a Sky Racing extended interview that Ray Thomas apparently did with Gay that hasn't gone to air yet. Whether it does, time will tell. But as you say, I think Gay can get her opinions out there, and she transcends racing. That's what's great about Gay. So I guess if she wants to, she'll get heard on the mainstream talkback radios and TVs and things like that, I'd imagine, if she wants to go down that route and as a vocal opponent of selling Rosehill.
Yeah, and Sky said that the interview has just been delayed. It hasn't been censored, whatever else, but there are suggestions, including a question raised by Gay Waterhouse herself about what's going on with that space. So there's a lot in play here. As I mentioned, I spoke with Peter McGauran, the ATC chairman, about the issue of what the members do and don't know at the moment, as well as the role of Racing New South Wales.
You can't expect for the club on April the 4th to have all of the details, given it's a decade-long infrastructure project that will involve many stakeholder groups. We will have the input, trainers, jockeys, owners, members, and breeders. There might be ideas from them that we haven't even thought of. We can't proceed with. We need to know if this is achievable with members and government.
Yeah, and I guess the second part of that is the government. The second part of that is the government. I mean, what are the guarantees around that? I mean, is there any certainty the government will actually pay this $5 billion, Peter?
I don't speak for the government, but
Yeah.
Premier Min's reaction yesterday was very encouraging. Reasonable.
He also said he expected negotiations to be long and laborious as well, which, would indicate that there may be some work to be done in terms of just getting the deal over the line.
Well, we're not going to get to that today unless they agree to a $5 billion sale.
Yeah.
That's the guarantee for members. Property transaction in the history of business, which have ramifications. Randwick, Canterbury, Warwick Farm, and the new racing training centre.
Like one of the questions sort of all the way along around about this and some raised by members and raised by various people here is about the funds distribution and how Racing New South Wales fits into that. I mean, is there clarity on how much of the eventual net proceeds will be retained by the ATC and how else it might be shared through the industry?
Future fund investment.
Yeah.
Operation. There are other models we could consider, but the proceeds taken down. Where will be?
And obviously the last few months have been a busy time bringing this proposal together. How much have you spoken to Racing New South Wales and Peter McGauran about this and about sort of, getting this together? Because obviously it's significantly involved obviously Racing New South Wales' cooperation as well.
And we have provided Racing New South Wales with the appropriate documentation, the crucial stages, given that it's a regulator.
I need to digest in that that clip and the rest of the interview, which featured on the Straight this week. As I mentioned, there's plenty there to look through. Tim, dare you make a prediction of what members might do on April 3?
You've not touched on this. There's the vocal people at both sides of this argument, but there is a lot of, I think, of the 11,000 members, there'd be a great proportion that are ambivalent to what happens, unfortunately. We've got compulsory voting in Australia, but probably for good reason, or, you can make cases both sides where this isn't, you're not forced to vote. So I'm sure some just won't vote at all, or, they're ambivalent to what happens. $5 billion, a lot of money, take the money and run. So I think it'll be closer than maybe the Save Rosehill people suggest, but you'd have to have the no vote favourite at this stage, I would have thought.
Okay, it's time for our daily stat of the week. Did you know that 1 in 3 Golden Slipper winners over the past 15 years have been sired by a Daily Stallion? And this year, Street Boss has one of the top contenders. He's no stranger to success, with 7% stakes winners to runners, and 1 in 6 of his progenies wins this season coming at stakes level. He's second only to the outstanding 2 Down Hot when it comes to percentage terms. And here's a rare feat. Street Boss's progeny took out both the Todman and the Riesling stakes, the 2 key Golden Slipper lead-ups, something no stallion has done since 2001. Okay, Tim, let's chat breeding and bloodstock. In particular news this week that Bella Nipotina would be offered for sale this year, the Everest winner. You've covered this story and spoke to several of the major players involved. Talk us through sort of, how this evolved and what goes on from here.
Well, it's no surprise that she's going to market this year, and that we'll hear from Mike Christian, the breeder and co-owner, later on in an audio clip. When I spoke to him on Tuesday, the decision was made official or released that she's retired from racing, but she almost went to auction last year. And I guess in a stroke of good fortune, they decided to race her on as a 6-year-old rising 7-year-old, and she went and won Group 1s in Brisbane. And then, of course, she went and won the Everest and scooped the majority of the $20 million on offer there, or 6 or 7 million first prize. So, the stroke of luck to continue her on. She's versatile, tough, as tough a mare as you've seen, probably a bit like Pride of Jenny. Same sire there, Pride of Dubai. Now she's going to auction, whether it's Magic Millions or Inglis. They're both pitching for that honour, I guess, and it's very competitive. It's not like a yearling sale where, you could go to Magic Millions or Easter or Premier and the auction house cops their 6% or 5%, whatever it is. Part of the negotiation is how much commission, I guess, the auction house is prepared to give up. And she's hugely valuable. How much is the question, from $2 million to $6 million, It's anyone's guess. It's wild. Imperatrice is probably the closest we can compare her to. She was a 5-year-old, 10-time Group 1 winner, Biome Invincible. But, her values, I spoke to an agent yesterday, Seamus Mills, and he said, look, when Imperatrice went through there on the table, they're doing nearest the pin. Some said 3, some said 4, and she went for 6. It just takes 2 people to go for those trophy mares, as Damon Gabberty described it.
Yeah, she certainly is. And you spoke to Michael Christian earlier on this week about her career and the reasons to sell.
Today to sort of look back and appreciate everything she did. It's all things come to an end, and it was obviously a difficult decision for everyone, but Kieran was recommended to the ownership group that the time had come, and we all accepted that, and so we'll get on to the next phase now. Yeah, we've asked both Inglis and Magic Millions, who I both respect enormously. We've asked them just to come up with a few ideas about how they think they would best sell her, and how they would market her, and then the decision will be made on that over the next sort of few days. You can say, yeah, look, we would love to keep her. We would love to keep her at the broodmare, but the other 50% ownership in the group are keen to sell. So she'll go to market. She'll go and be sold in the next couple of months.
Yep.
It certainly shapes us a big year for broodmare sales, Tim, and the sales themselves are taking shape as we speak. News this week that Thoroughbred Breeders Australia and Ozhorse have appointed their new CEO, Andrew Hore-Lacy. Hore-Lacy is known as the man behind 7 Horse Racing. He's been in charge of that broadcast for a considerable amount of time. It's an interesting decision, Tim, but the path from the media to that Ozhorse/TBA job, we've seen that before. Tom Riley obviously has been in the Ozhorse/CEO job, Ozhorse/TBA job for the last 10 years. He left in January to take the job at the MRC, Melbourne Racing Club. Yeah, interesting selection, and I think Andrew will have he won't have much time to get his feet under the desk, because I think there's a sort of wealth of pressing issues there to sort of deal with.
Sure, but I guess, Andrew's well connected, I guess understands racing, but also the media and leveraging the media, I guess, to get the stories out there, particularly, I guess, with Ozhorse and trying to market the industry to the, not rank and file, but the mums and dads owners and all those sort of people, to get them involved. And, Tom Riley's been very good at encouraging international investment. And I guess Andrew will have to continue on that path. And, he's inheriting, probably coming into a good time, even though the industry might be going down slightly, but I still think it's an enviable position that he's going into.
And talking about breeders, Tim, you had a chat with Joy Mackay of Canning Downs about the decision to disperse of their bloodstock and pretty much get out of thoroughbred breeding after a considerably long time involved in the industry. We seem to be seeing a bit of a mass consolidation of breeders at the moment, Tim. Is it fair to say that? But Queensland and Victoria seem to be particularly vulnerable. We're seeing these sort of small to medium players preferring to opt out because of the cost of doing business.
As we know, it's a difficult industry. Breeding's not that different to racing. There's generally only one, or let's include the place getters. There's only a few winners every race, or a winner every race. And the motivations for different people, why they get involved, why they breed horses, why they own horses. Some do it, it's their livelihood. They need to make money. Others, it's their pastime, it's their hobby. They've got businesses outside racing that can subsidise their passion, I guess. And that's what the industry relies on across the administration too, with volunteers and so forth for that matter. But they've decided, Joy, Canning Downs, hugely successful breeding operation, but she revealed they've been losing money for quite some time, and they were happy with that because they love it. But they're in their 70s. Her husband, John Barnes, family farm for, I think it's 107 years at Canning Downs in southeast Queensland, and they've decided now's the time to bail out, or that there's no family succession, or that John's children don't have the passion for it or want to continue. So they're selling up through Inglis Digital. The weanlings will go through Magic Millions in May, and I guess we've seen it. Element Hill, I don't think the property's sold, but they did it last year. Yeah, it's just one of those things. If you lose the passion on, when it's a marginal business, these these decisions will keep happening.
And this is what Joy had to say about their decision to stop breeding.
Look, it's just one of those things. We've sort of talked about over the last couple of years, and whilst there's probably never ever the perfect time, we think this is the right time, and we've there's no doubt that breeding is a very expensive game. We certainly don't make any money out of it, which isn't the objective at all. And then knowing at some stage, we'll need to reach this decision. Now seems like a good time. And, a few people have sort of said, question the timing because the market's probably, not as buoyant as it has been in the past. But, with that, hopefully there are opportunities for others and breeding. We've had some, really good results with our breeding. It was, really great to watch Grafter Burmers win that 2-year-old cutest jewel race yesterday, and we hope that someone will go on and be able to sort of produce 4 or half brothers to him. So, whilst it is difficult because it's a fantastic property. John's family's had it now for a while, since 1917, and I think probably, I think people can see that the horses we breed here are, good skeletal conformation. It's good horse country, and it's always a shame, if you could go on forever. But I think things are becoming more polarised in breeding. I think, it lends itself towards, bigger farms and, notably with stallions, and that's not ever what we want it to be. It's just lovely being here. We just said this morning, it's going to be, pretty confronting when next we come up and there won't be any mares or very few mares in the paddock. The only ones will be the retirees who've earned themselves a sort of their retirement here. So that's
Inglis's Easter Yearling sale is just over 2 weeks away. To be staged on April 6th and 7th at Riverside Stables in Sydney, the Easter sale has featured 37 future Group 1 winners since 2018. 9 of those could have been purchased for $200,000 or less. It is also the source of current 3-year-old stars, Lady Shenandoah, Switzerland, Autumn Glow and Growing Empire. With 421 yearlings catalogued, including 228 that are either the progeny of stakes winners or siblings to stakes winners, there is no shortage of quality options. Go to inglis.com.au to check out the catalogue. Finally, Tim, of the wagering landscape, a story this week about a reprieve for smaller bookies who are facing the prospect of a 6-fold increase in their racing data fees. We've been investigating this story for the better part of 6 weeks, trying to get to the bottom of what the story is. We've heard about these fees going up, and it's actually only the last 24 hours that we've had confirmed that the fees, while they will go up slightly, won't go up anywhere near what we thought they would be. But I guess it does sort of give it comes amid a context of a broader fee increase for AFL betting, which is affecting the smaller bookies particularly as well. They seem vulnerable right now, Tim. It seems like we had this explosion of smaller bookies come, over 100 bookies across Australia, helped by the pandemic boom of wagering, but also with the access to technology and the lowering of barriers of entry. But those who generally want to set a market and generally want to be bookies, it seems to be hard for them to make it work in both a racing context and a sport context. And I guess what I sort of try to say to you, Tim, how important are these smaller bookies? We talk about the big players in Australia and, if we talk about the big three, they probably control 75 to 80% of the market. If you add in a couple of others, it's probably over 90% by the time you added a couple more into there. If you're talking probably maybe, let's say, 5 to 8% of the market, these smaller operators sort of, generate. How important are they to the Australian wagering ecosystem, do you think?
Well, I think they are probably, for the average punter that's got a sports bet tab or Ladbrokes account, or probably possibly all three. But for the professional, semi-professional punters that spread their bets across, those 100 bookies to the minimum bet, $1,000 or $2,000 to win each bet when in a race, I think it's vital to the ecosystem. And like the corner store, you want everyone to have a chance to go into business, and it is. They don't have the advantages of scale like the big 3 or 4, but those little costs that go up like data feeds. It's Warwick's story on the site now. You want those costs hit them hard if they go up, and it's good to see that for whatever reason, whether it was work story or what, why they backed down, I'm not sure, but they, every little increment or cost adds up, and we need as many players in the game as possible. Again, like breeding, as we just touched on with Joy Mackay in Canning Downs, you want as many players that are passionate about it, whether that's bookies, punters, owners, trainers, jockeys, involved as possible.
Yeah, indeed. I think, I said diversity is really important. I think, I think it's sort of, it does paint the picture of some of these challenges that they're facing. Even as we've spoken before, the bigger guys are struggling enough. It's hard enough for them. Sportsbet obviously still are the dominant player in the market, but it's harder for them to make money. Entain have got their own challenges. Tab, we've spoken about at length as well. We've talked about the need for some of these smaller players, points bet, and these people looking for other options. There's plenty of challenges in the market at the moment, let alone for the big guys, let alone for the smaller guys as well. Okay, thank you for joining us on Straight Talk, brought to you, of course, by our sponsors, Inglis and Darley. Don't forget to give us a rating wherever you're listening to our podcast, be it on YouTube, Apple, Podbean, Spotify, wherever else you listen to us. Give us a rating, send some comments. If you've got anything to suggest to us, send an email to editor@thestraight.com.au. And looking forward to talking to you again next week as we build up towards the Easter yearling sale and, of course, the championships. It's a great time of year, and we'll talk to you then.